All right, let's talk about Bill Maher. So Bill Maher is doing a book tour. He's appearing on a lot of shows and saying a lot of things, but among them, he went on Megyn Kelly's podcast, and here's what we learned. Bill Maher did not know that Hillary Clinton and all the top Democrats said out loud and often that the 2016 election was rigged and was illegitimate, and Trump was not an illegitimate president.
Hillary Clinton, of course, is the original election denier. I'm sure you voted for her in 2016.
Well, she's not an election denier.
She absolutely was the OG election denier.
First of all, she came out before the sun had risen to concede the election to Trump.
And then spent the next 4 years saying he was illegitimate. He was an illegitimate president.
Okay, well, first of all, she didn't say he was an illegitimate.
Yes, she did.
You tell me exactly what she said.
She said those exact words repeatedly.
Believe he knows he's an illegitimate president. There were a bunch of different reasons why the election turned out the way it did. And so I know that he knows that this wasn't on the level.
Okay.
He learned that yesterday. Hold this in your mind. Bill Maher's job, his only job, well, I guess he does stand up too, but his only job is talking about politics. And he didn't know the biggest story in the country. He didn't know that election denial is something that Democrats do every election. And he learned it live on the podcast. Now that's embarrassing. That should be humiliating.
You get Donald Trump, a criminal election denier who is going to transform this country into an authoritarian place like we've never seen before, or you get Joe Biden with all his flaws.
Also
and
a criminal.
problems. Okay, what is his crime again?
The special counsel Robert Hur said he'd committed felonies, but he wouldn't indict him because he was a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. He couldn't get a conviction in front of a jury.
And what was that crime? That was the
classified documents. All over his basement, his garage, everywhere. But Trump has two classified documents, pieces to his case. One is you had them, and the second is you obstructed justice when we demanded them back. So, okay, against Biden, you don't get charged with obstruction. But number one, where's the classified documents charged against him? He's also a felon.
You got your story. You know, I look.
It was way worse than I thought. I really thought he understood what was true, but was taking a position that maybe was a little bit personal because he doesn't like Trump or something. That was my operating theory.
I think on January 20th, 2025, he'll show up at the White House, whether he's invited or not. And I don't think that's going to be good.
He's gonna bomb in if he lost?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Bomb is a word I wouldn't even throw around lightly.
Oh, stop it. He's not going to do that.
Right. Like there was never an attack on the Capitol, Megan.
Oh, I hear you. But he's not going to show up at the inauguration.
Like they didn't show up at the Capitol and break windows and knock down doors and kill cops.
It gets worse. He also believed that cops were killed on January 6th.
And
They
didn't do that.
And they didn't break windows,
They didn't
knock
kill
down
cops.
They of course did.
Cops plural. He believes that protesters killed cops on January 6th.
No, they didn't.
Who did? They died of natural causes that day?
Yeah.
Yes, they died of natural causes. That's in the news. It's called the news.
Yeah, nobody died that day.
Cops.
No, not true. Who?
Okay.
Who?
Oh, I don't remember the names.
They didn't. There was Brian Sicknick, who died later after the fact, and the coroner's report did not say it was because of what he had inhaled.
But was taking a position that maybe was a little bit personal because he doesn't like Trump or something. That was my operating theory. My current operating theory, which is really well established by Megyn Kelly and also Gutfeld, is that he doesn't know what the news is. And it's his job to talk about it. I've never seen anything like this. This is quite remarkable, actually.
Because who wants to live in a country where the people who try to overthrow the government are seen as the bad guys, huh?
They weren't insurrectionists, Bill.
They weren't.
They were a bunch of numbskulls.
They chased oh, that's so stupid. They chased duly elected representatives out of the building and wanted to hang the vice president for certifying the election. That's not an insurrection?
The people who engaged in violent acts or actually made threats along those lines are all being prosecuted appropriately. And I've said repeatedly, I hope they get the book thrown at them, and they've had it.
So that's not.
You're
that's
so
not
upset about the entrapment that happened of the Muslims after 9/11. How about the entrapment that happened to some of those J6 protesters? It's more nuanced than you're suggesting. They were not insurrectionists. There was never any possibility that they were. I've heard you refer to it as a coup.
They attempted.
Going to take over the government. It wasn't going to happen. It was a protest.
They broke into
it was
the
a
Capitol.
riot.
Again, the January insurrection is the biggest story in the country because it's the main thing that will determine whether people vote for Trump. And he didn't know probably the most important fact that the protesters didn't kill anybody, but the Capitol Police killed one.
It's a leftist dream to try to make it sound even worse than it was. These leftists who didn't care at all when their people were out in the roads killing cops, actually killing, hurting cops, killing others in the BLM protests, suddenly found their conscience when it happened on J6.
Killing cops is always wrong. Doing it in the service of trying to overthrow the government of the United States is a little bit different.
It
didn't happen because
it didn't happen.
We were lucky it didn't happen. They tried to make it happen. Attempting to commit a crime is bad. Trump tries to commit crimes all the time, like this one. The fact that he doesn't succeed doesn't make it better. It makes it better for the country. Let's see what happens next time. We are not exactly like the detective and the serial killer. Oh, we're a lot more alike than you think. We're actually not that alike, I think.
I think you're right. Yeah. I agree.
Remember, I often say to you, you can no longer have a conversation with somebody, a productive conversation, with someone who thinks that some of the news is true. He thinks some of the news is true. It's his job to talk about the news, and he still thinks some of it is real, the political stuff. I mean, if there's a earthquake, they usually get that right. Natural disaster, sure. They can tell you what day the holiday will fall on. But no, when they talk about politics, none of that's real. None of it's real. It's at least out of context. So here's the ultimate. So Maher said, he said this on Gutfeld. He said that long before January 6th, he's taking credit, Maher is, because he predicted that Trump would not leave office peacefully. So he's taking credit, and he said, people said that when I said that, long ago, people said, Bill, you smoke too much marijuana. And Bill joked, well, apparently I smoked just enough, because sure enough, Trump didn't leave office peacefully. Except that he did leave office peacefully. So Bill Maher is saying, I correctly predicted that Trump would not leave peacefully. We all observed that Trump left peacefully. And he's claiming that his prediction was right, while we all observe with our own eyes that Trump is not president and that the violence was never intended to have that outcome. The protest was very specific. Can you find out if this election was rigged? Because it sure looks like it. Do you think he doesn't know that the point of the insurrection was to find out if the election was rigged? Because it sure looked like it. Do you think he really doesn't know that? Now, I would have said before, of course he knows that. But now I say no. I think maybe the most basic facts about January 6th, he actually doesn't know. And it's his number one reason for opposing Trump is the January 6th situation. And he showed he doesn't actually even know what happened. He's the main voice for Democrats understanding their world. He's one of the main voices. This is the most pathetic book tour I've ever seen. Now, the book might actually be pretty funny, so I'm not gonna diss the book because I haven't read it. And he said he did personally personally edited it, so I had all of his best stuff from his monologues. So if you like that stuff, it's probably pretty good. However, if I were in the business of talking about politics and I were hanging my hat particularly on the January 6th situation and on immigration too, because that's a big deal, and I didn't know anything about those topics that was real, I would quit my job. Like after this book tour, he should literally retire. He's part of the problem. Let me say it as directly as possible. He's a fucking disaster. Bill Maher is a fucking disaster. I actually thought that he would be helpful because he seemed to be open-minded enough that when he heard an argument on the other side, he didn't reject it immediately. But the problem is he's intentionally preventing himself from seeing arguments on the other side, apparently, by limiting his news access. So now that he's somewhat accidentally been exposed to other opinions, I think he needs to quit.